WNBA Finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. You know, I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, you know, it's obviously been a tough week.
The nuclear button was recently pressed by the WNBA. Furthermore, the league may have just signed its own death sentence if the speculations circulating from the front office are accurate. The league's old-school administration and its exploding new popularity have been at odds for months. However, nobody anticipated that the rope would break so abruptly. The sports world is being rocked by the stories we are hearing. Following a disastrous collapse in discussions for the new collective bargaining agreement, Commissioner Cathy Engelbert has reportedly sought to suspend Caitlin Clark. It's shocking to learn that Clark declined to accept a contract that the league offered. Music, a pact that many insiders are characterizing as a last-ditch effort to limit her authority and manage her income. The WNBA made a historic mistake if they believed that this power play would make its golden goose comply. Not only has the criticism been loud, but it has been overwhelming. Season tickets are being canceled by fans. Social media is urging people to take action. And all of the women's basketball industry's financial structures are now precariously close to collapsing. Peeling back the layers of what really transpired in that bargaining room is necessary to fully see why a suspension like this is so disastrous. Music. There was more to this than simply a salary. According to sources, the WNBA offered Clark a team-friendly contract that was meant to establish the new CBA era, but the conditions were allegedly harsh. Music. We're discussing provisions that would give the league undue control over her image, required marketing appearances that would interfere with her off-season, and a pay scale that hardly changed in relation to her market worth. For the sake of the game, the league was effectively requesting that Caitlin Clark pay for her own exploitation. It wasn't simply a disagreement over a contract when she rejected and slipped the document back across the table. The whole WNBA financial paradigm, which has depended on player sacrifice for decades, was rejected. However, treating Clark like a regular player was the first error in a series of mishaps that brought us to this point. According to the current story, Commissioner Engelbert considered this rejection to constitute insubordination. No player, regardless of how many shirts she sells, is greater than the league in the eyes of the old guard. The purported suspension is being presented as a disciplinary action, a means to remind the music newbie who is in charge of the kingdom and to humble her. It's a traditional corporate power maneuver. Turn off the access, turn off the music, muffle the voice, and watch for the worker to crawl back. However, this tactic overlooks a basic fact of the contemporary sports environment. Caitlin Clark is the CEO of her own company, and we live in a time where the economy is driven by players. Music. Using a suspension to intimidate her is like going to the neighborhood grocery shop. Attempting to outlaw Amazon. The giant is not harmed by it. It only guarantees the local shop closes. The arithmetic just does not match up for the WNBA, so let's examine the leverage here. Caitlin Clark has a reportedly $28 million, 8-year Nike signature contract. Her yearly off-court salary is easily in the 8-figure music bracket when you include her collaborations with Gatorade, State Farm, Wilson, and Panini. Now contrast that with the WNBA's maximum pay, which is almost $250,000. It is insignificant. It's money for lunch. The commissioner is living in a dream world if she believes that suspending Clark's WNBA pay would negatively impact her financial situation. For the next 5 years, Clark might remain one of the richest female athletes in the world while sitting on her sofa and never touching a basketball. But music can't say the same of the league. They use the Clark economy as justification for their expansion ambitions, new media rights agreements, and increases in ticket prices. They are essentially igniting their own bank vault by suspending her. When you consider the time, this scenario becomes much more unstable. The Players' Union, WNBPA, has already chosen not to participate in the current CBA. They took this action after seeing Caitlin Clark's income. They decided they wanted a larger share of the pie after seeing the sold-out venues, the chartered aircraft, and the enormous TV ratings. This irony is so thick that it could be sliced with a knife. In light of Clark's achievements, the union is requesting further funding. However, Clark is purportedly being punished by the league for attempting to guarantee her own future. It has caused a rift in the locker rooms where it is hard to ignore music. Although there has been a well-documented history of envy and bullying from certain veterans who believe Clark receives too much attention, the astute players are aware of the reality. They are aware that the money train will stop if Clark falls. These charter flights return to commercial, and the pay increases vanish if the commissioner offends the greatest attraction in the sport's history. However, the challenge to the WNBA is not only internal, it is existential music, with an unparalleled name. This punishment is overshadowed by the new 3-on-3 league that Breanna Stewart and Nafi Sakir created. Unrivaled is providing equity, something the WNBA has declined to do. In addition to the highest average earnings in the history of women's professional sports, they are providing athletes ownership shares. Caitlin Clark has a landing site ready and waiting if she feels mistreated by the WNBA and believes the commissioner is more interested in controlling her than collaborating with her. Consider the optics, music, of the situation. The face of women's basketball abandoning the WNBA to participate in a Miami upstart league. The WNBA would be reduced to music, secondary status, and Unrivaled would gain instant legitimacy. The commissioner is not only taking a chance on a disagreement over the contract. She is unintentionally giving her rivals the most powerful tool to ruin her league. This is where the WNBA is really losing the plot, so we also need to discuss the fan response. Music. Caitlin Clark's fan following is devoted to her rather than the Shield. These aren't ardent WNBA supporters who will remain around out of habit. These are brand new fans who tuned in only to see the no-look passes and the logo three-pointers. When Clark leaves the floor, those supporters turn off the TV instead of merely switching to another game. Clark's exclusion from the Olympic squad earlier in the season gave us a sneak peek at this. Millions of dollars were lost in marketing, and the indignation was evident. A suspension is the same error multiplied by music. 10. Hashtags for a boycott of the league have already taken over social media. And Kathy Engelbert's resignation. The WNBA is engaged in a dual war, one against its star player and another against its own clientele. Speaking of music, Kathy Engelbert's situation has never been more unstable. This purported suspension seems like the last-ditch effort of a leader who has lost control of the story. Engelbert received criticism for being very passive during the season. While players like Kennedy Carter made crude remarks about Clark, she said nothing. Music. In a catastrophic interview, she likened the poisonous bigotry that athletes face to a competition between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. This comment infuriated almost everyone and prompted a public apologies. Now that Clark is being targeted, it seems that the pendulum has swung from passivity to dictatorship. She now seems more like a tyrant than a commissioner after letting so much go previously. The WNBA club's owners, who are at last getting a return on their investment, must be quite concerned about this leadership approach. These owners will lose millions if Engelbert's ego pushes Clark away. Commissioners in professional sports are appointed at the owner's discretion. Additionally, Engelbert is now turning into a liability. It is impossible to exaggerate the complexity of the CBA discussions. The players want the league's administration to undergo a revolution. They seek a revenue share that is comparable to the NBA, where players get around half of all basketball-related earnings. WNBA players now don't even come close to that. In the past, the league has claimed that they are not profitable. Thus, half of zero is zero. Clark, however, altered that calculation. The league is currently making money. In some areas, ticket sales have increased over 400%. The merchandise is selling out quickly. A real, audit-verified economic boom is the Caitlin Clark impact. It is not only selfish, but also terrible business for the league to turn around and give her a contract that restricts her potential. It implies that league administrators are attempting to control expenses rather than making investments in expansion, and that they still see the WNBA as a charity case rather than a thriving enterprise. Clark's unwillingness to sign was an indication that she was more familiar with the company than its management. Since jealousy is a major factor in why this suspension seems so intimate, let's examine it in more detail. There has been an odd vibe from the league's elder guard ever since Clark was picked. Legends like Cheryl Swoops have been known to minimize Clark's collegiate accomplishments by making false claims. She was the focus of physical action from players on the field that went much beyond typical basketball hostility. There was an obvious, "you can't sit with us" vibe. It is the commissioner's responsibility to close such gap in order to promote the emerging talents while paying tribute to the classics. Music. Instead, Angel Burt is essentially siding with the detractors by purportedly suspending Clark. She is confirming the notion that Clark must either wait her turn or pay her dues. However, you don't urge your star to wait at the back of the line in the entertainment industry, which includes sports. On the marquee, you write their name. Every conspiracy idea that the WNBA sets its own glass ceiling is supported by this suspension. The NBA is another thing to take into account. In addition to owning a significant portion of the WNBA music, the NBA has provided hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies to the league throughout the years. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver can spot a quality product. Realizing that Clark holds the secret to the WNBA's eventual self-sufficiency, he has been supportive of her. You have to wonder what's going on in the back channels at the moment. Is Adam Silver calling Angel Burt and asking her what she's doing? In order to cease writing checks to cover the losses, the NBA wants the WNBA to turn a profit. The NBA's goals are clearly at odds with the suspension of its single lucrative asset. Big brothers may intervene and compel a settlement if this impasse continues, which would be the ultimate embarrassment for the WNBA front office. Let's see what happens if this suspension is upheld. Suppose Clark is sidelined for the first month of the season. TV ratings are cratering as a direct result of music. ESPN and ION, two networks who inked large contracts anticipating Clark programming, will be incensed. Instead of funding the Commissioner's Discipline Hour, they funded the Caitlin Clark program. Discussions about contract violations may begin to take place behind closed doors. Next, examine the arenas. There will be vacant seats for teams like the Indiana Fever, who sell out every night. It's not only the Fever, however. It's the rival teams. The Los Angeles Sparks and Chicago Sky depend on that one yearly game to increase their earnings when the Fever visit to play them. Every team in the league suffers financially from Clark's suspension. Music. It spreads across the whole ecosystem. This disagreement also reveals a significant disparity in the WNBA's regard for its players. Music. The league has prioritized the league above the individual, marketing itself on group achievement for years. When you don't have a worldwide celebrity, that works, but now they do. In the 1980s, the NBA discovered this. Because of their marketing efforts, the NBA did not take off. They sold Bird vs. Magic and subsequently Michael Jordan, which caused them to blow up. They leaned into the strength of the stars. Right now, the WNBA is attempting to squeeze a peg the size of Michael Jordan into a square hole. In a meritocratic sport, they are attempting to impose result equality. They are battling the inherent seriousness of celebrity by attempting to dehumanize Clark with a suspension. Stars are what the fans desire. They're looking for stories. They're looking for heroes. The league is attempting to impose bureaucracy on them. We also need to talk about the other sponsors' silence. Nike in particular. Compared to the WNBA, they have made more investments on Caitlin Clark. They are planning international concerts, filming marketing ads, and releasing a distinctive shoe line. Do you think Nike will be pleased that a league official benched their best athlete? Nike has enormous influence in the sports industry. They may apply pressure that makes the commissioner's head spin if they believe the WNBA is devaluing their asset. In the 1990s, Michael Jordan demonstrated this. In many cases, the shoe corporations have more influence than the teams. If Nike contacts the WNBA and says, "Fix this or we pull our league sponsorship," the ban will expire that same day. The WNBA is behaving as if they are the only stakeholder in the situation, and the business machinery behind Clark is too large to fail. This also has a psychological component. The unappreciative story. According to the league, Clark ought to be appreciative of the chance to participate. However, this is not the case in reality. Clark's decision to play basketball should be appreciated by the WNBA. She could have played soccer. She had the option to start broadcasting right away. She decided to make this league better. The following generation of players receives a message from the suspension. "We'll chop you down if you become too large." What impact does it have on the amazing talent now emerging in the NCAA? When Juju Watkins sees this, does she think, "Music, can't wait to join the WNBA"? Or does she consider unparalleled or music international options? The WNBA seems nasty, petty, and unprofessional as a result of this punishment. 4 years to come, It harms the hiring pipeline. Rumors of a mutiny inside the Fever Group are also beginning to surface as the stalemate goes on. Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, two of Clark's colleagues, are struggling. Music. They must safeguard their own careers while also wanting to help their teammates. Sources, however, claim that the locker room is unified. They are aware that all boats rise with the tide. The league can undoubtedly impose unpleasant conditions on Boston and Mitchell if it can do so on Clark. Disguised as a disciplinary problem, this is a labor rights issue. The players are aware that they would lose the struggle for the next CBA if they allow the league to prevail in current conflict. Because of this, the union representative is probably on Clark's side and telling her to wait. Angelbert's worst-case scenario is the players banding together against the front staff. The media's part in this should not be overlooked. The WNBA is taking over the 24-hour news cycle for the first time, but for all the wrong reasons. Every day, Pat McAfee, Stephen A. Smith, and the whole ESPN lineup analyze the commissioner's incapacity. The public's opinion is negatively impacted by each section that queries why the WNBA is undermining itself. With a single administrative move, the league is dismantling the millions of dollars it spent on marketing initiatives to establish the W brand. A decision has already been made by the court of popular opinion. Clark is the martyr, and the WNBA is the evil. Such negative publicity is not something you can purchase. It adheres to a brand for many years. Because it's not only a leverage move, the unparalleled threat merits more investigation. For the contemporary enthusiast, it's a superior product. The stars are the main emphasis, the game is quicker, and the spacing is better. It is designed for Instagram highlights and TikTok. The WNBA is a conventional full-court, 5-on-5 sport. Yes, it has a history, but history doesn't cover all of the costs. Innovation does. Clark isn't only switching leagues if she signs with Unrivaled. She is indicating a change in the way people watch women's basketball.